Yeah, let's.
She even say, I might actually get
That'd really be something different, wouldn't it?
Come on, I don't want to hear it. Go back to work. I can't believe she will retire before I do. I don't know why they keep printing these things. Not real sure who it is you need to tell.
No. It's, Tommy, it's already been discussed.
Huh?
It's already been discussed. It's gonna be pared down to one package. Hey, you, Mr. Weaver.
We don't, I don't use them.
I really like it.
All right.
I had a few things I was doing, getting ready for that
I
farm
do take
party.
the clips off my, I'd say I do steal the clips off them. I use them.
All right, I want to call this work session of the June work session of the Planning Commission to order. A follow-up on old business, if we have any commentary on old business to make.
I'm going to defer to Mr. Coons.
Mr. Coons or Mr. Eglin, either one. Mr. Coons has left you alone. Whichever one wants to comment on any of the old business that we would like to get an update on before we move on to the new.
Old business, just recapping what happened the last Board of Supervisors meeting. The recommendation from you all to allow truck stops with a CUP in the C2 and growth area was approved by the board. If any of you watched the meeting, you did hear we did have a tiny home application actually come in. It's either the day of or the day after you all had spoke about those uses. So we brought it up to the board. With the removal of the definition for tiny homes, that means that now tiny homes in the building code will be allowed in any district where no single-family dwelling is allowed to reside. So those are two things that happened at Board of Supervisors meeting. Sitting ready to answer any questions.
I guess maybe unfinished business is a better way to look at it than old business, just looking at the items from the gateway items and the other odds and ends from the comprehensive plan, just an update on that.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Quarles.
could I get a better definition of, or a definition of the tiny homes, I guess?
The Virginia Building Code now has a section for tiny homes that's
Well-
between 120 square feet and 400 square feet. And they have different requirements, so risers, ceiling height, and hallway width. So previously it wasn't allowed because the building code didn't have sections for it. You had to meet the Uniform Statewide Building Code. There was no, you had the riser height, hallway width, and the headroom
Okay.
was what it was, but now they have a section that allows for it.
So now these are all foundation-based?
Yep, permanent foundation required.
Okay, that's where I was.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. So again, I guess looking for updates on the gateway items, transportation plans, other pieces of the comprehensive plan.
So where I'm at today, which either the last meeting or meeting before, talking about the projects we had to get done. The East End Radio Tower, which is one of the ones that's before you today, has been a focus because that's a federal grant with a timeline that we need to get done. And then also the turf fields, trying to get that project started while school is out. That's been my priority. And then we also had the search for the director. So to be honest with you, since last meeting, there has not been a lot of comp plan work done.
All right. All right. And I guess, Mr. Goodwin, we did have an item that you were working on with the board.
Yeah, and that's a follow-up to the issue on rezoning and the
CUPs.
additional, what I'll call packed-in uses that aren't addressed in any of the conceptual plans, aren't addressed in any of the conditions, but it's wide open and we'll never get a chance to see it again. And I did get a call from the chairman of the board saying that they did not accept the language, but he agrees with the reasoning. And told me that he was going to appoint somebody. He said he was going to appoint Manning, but then I heard later it was going to be Tommy, so I'm not sure who he's appointing, but I'm ready anytime to work on it.
All right.
I think he might have mentioned that to me.
Excuse me?
I think he did mention that to me.
Okay.
All right. Very good. Sounds like we might hear something next month, maybe. We'll see. All right, we'll move on to the new business. We have the opportunity to review whatever we need to review here before the meeting at 7 o'clock during new business. I'm not sure that everything here is something we want to review, if there are particular questions about. So what I wanted to do was ask, we might want to see something on the land development regulations, the schedule of fees, and the technology overlay district. I'm not sure if anyone has an interest in talking about any of the other public hearings here that are listed or changes. Does anyone have a desire to hear further detail on any of the other items?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr.
I've
Goodwin.
got some questions. I think they're all technical in nature, and if I can ask them here, then I don't have to go into it in a regular meeting.
All right, on all of them, or, because we can do that, that's fine.
Well, yeah, this is probably more for the applicant, but when we had the pre-application meeting on the storage issue for Virginia Electric and Power, I had asked them to talk about what the end state looked like beyond this CUP, and also to update any historical documentation. We got stuff dating back to 2010
Oh, yeah.
in here. There's an environmental report that hasn't been updated in the Federal Register since 2017. And I had specifically asked to get back in touch with the Regulatory Commission and see what you can get updated on that, and it hasn't been done. I think you were at that meeting as well. The pre-application meeting?
No, I was not at that pre-application meeting.
Okay. I know I was.
I couldn't make that one. I think.
And there were just two questions, you know, where are we going with this? This license is 2058,
Yes,
and we look at that, I can't do the math in my head real quick, but that's like, what, 4 more CUPs?
yeah.
Somewhere in that neighborhood? So what are we looking at as an end state?
I'm not going to speak for Dominion on this, but I will give you some insight in working on these kind of licenses for Dominion for other projects that we did when I was there. As an example, the environmental plan. And it'll be interesting to hear how they answer that.
Okay,
But the environmental plan is something that is created when you apply for the license, and it's valid for the period of the license.
okay.
So that I would not necessarily think would be updated before the license is extended. So if the
I
license
mean,
is,
it won't be updated until 2058?
if the license is valid through 2058,
It says
I
in
don't
here.
believe there's a regulatory requirement to update it before 2058.
Follow up with you?
Well, I think what you need to
Then
do,
why did they
You may
address
follow
it
up,
in
yeah.
2017 when that was
did they update it in 2017?
no, that's the last time they talk about the environmental, 2017.
Yeah,
But this goes back to 2010 for the original.
yes. Yeah,
So what is the requirement? Does it have to be updated for each, it was updated the last time the CUP came through. Does it have to be updated each time? Or
Well,
does it go back to that original license that was,
and this is why,
2010.
and this is why it's good to ask the applicant specifically to get
Right.
that. But typically, for these kind of licenses, this, and we did it for North Anna Unit 3, we did it for license renewal for North Anna Units 1 and 2, for Surrey Units 1 and 2. You do the environmental plan for the license, and it's valid through the period of the license.
okay.
So that's, I'm just saying that's typical for my experience, but I'm not going to speak for the applicant here. Just a little background that I'm aware of.
Right.
But it's a good question to ask them, yeah.
Next issue is on the wireless communication facility. I saw the letters that went out to the providers, and we're about at the end of that 20-day period. To you or to the director?
To Mr. Coombs.
Okay. Have we got any responses back?
No, sir. So we notified them, but we'll see what happens once the tower's constructed and built. So we've sent it out, and we'll see. There has been different people reaching out and asking about, different places, locations, towers. So they may be interested once the tower's constructed, but as of right now, I don't think we have anything.
To build it, they will come.
I mean, and just to be honest with you, when we were working,
And is it 20 days up?
yes,
I thought I counted it.
we made sure that,
Should we defer it and go back? Because one of the things in this application is we want to guard against proliferation of towers in the county.
so
And
this,
that's what I took those letters to address. Are you all planning anything? And we
No.
don't get any answer at all, then I'm not sure we can satisfy that.
those letters basically tell the other companies, hey, we're putting a tower up, would you like to co-locate?
No, sir. Those letters say, we're putting a tower up. Please tell us if you have any intent to construct a tower within 2 miles. I'm
And also-
paraphrasing, but I'm pretty sure that's what that letter said. And if we don't know the answer to that, then we can't address that proliferation issue that's in the application.
So the intent is if they would have to get a CUP as well for their tower. There's no place they can by right build a tower, so there wouldn't be proliferation because they would have to come to the planning commission as well as the board to get a CUP to build that tower.
I'm gonna remember you said that if we do get a CUP.
No, I mean, it is, correct?
I'm gonna vote against it.
I think I have a detailed answer. I'm gonna pull something up and confirm.
Yeah, so Tom will
I'm
pull it
not
up for
trying to
you.
be
No,
hard over on it.
I hear you.
We're
I
gonna
mean,
get
that's-
you an answer.
Yeah, so I mean, building the East End radio tower, the intent was that we were going to allow for co-location on it. That's why the design, or the RFP for the design build of the tower included the ability for co-location. Because if we could generate revenue from it to help offset the capital cost, that was the whole intent of it.
Get it.
And it's a requirement of the code to also send out those letters. So, like I said, we met the requirement as well.
John.
Okay, Tom, did you have something?
I haven't found it yet, but I believe that the letter language actually comes from the Telecommunication Wireless Code section itself. Why that's important is because around 2017, and I don't have that at my fingertips, is one of the things I'm trying to pull up. Around the 2017 to 2019 timeframe, as you may remember, the state of Virginia changed some legislation or added some where we could not request a propagation map to determine whether there was tower proliferation. So I would actually say that perhaps we need to update our language that we have that is required to send in the letter to account for the fact that we can't ask for specific questions such as, do you plan to build a tower within 2 miles? They might not be required to answer that question. This is something I'd have to discuss with legal further, but I think that perhaps the solution to your question is we need to actually update what is required to go in that letter, to make it more of a, would you like to co-locate on this tower? Is that in your intent? And I will have in my PowerPoint presentation later this evening a map from our 2007 telecommunications master plan, which we have. It is from 2007, but it has a 2020 theoretical coverage map on it, and this parcel actually is just outside of an area that is projected to have coverage. So the 2007 telecommunications master plan shows that this area is not going to be served as estimated by 2020. So I think I answered a few of your questions there in a roundabout way, hopefully.
Okay. All right. Yes, you did. I appreciate it.
Mr. Barlow, you follow up on that?
This is a tower at Holly Grove Fire Department?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The purpose of that tower is to cover a dead area that did not get covered in the last, when we upgraded the radios and all that stuff. There was a spot down there that just, they're using their cell phones to try and get back to the sheriff's department and dispatch up here. So we got with Motorola and tried to find out an area that the county could put up a tower to cover that dead spot. That's what the purpose of this tower is now. Then the county's trying to, if there's a way to recoup some of their money by letting somebody else go on it, they left that option open. Right now, the tower that is at, across from the pallet plant, I believe stayed there for 8 years, constructed with no carriers on it. So I don't really anticipate anybody going on it, other than the providers that are gonna provide the coverage for the fire and EMS and the sheriff's department in that area. So I'm gonna be baffled if it becomes a money-making operation.
I read the language of, it was an area in need. I was just questioning, we've asked them if they plan to do anything within 2 miles, and, if they are, or if they are not ready to say, we passed this, and somebody comes in within 2 miles, I'm assuming we're gonna vote no.
Commissioner Goodwin, if I may, I actually found the state code section. It's 15.2-2316.4.2. I'm going to pull out some sections. It's a lengthy part of code. So in its receiving consideration and processing of a complete application submitted under subsection A of another state code, or for any zoning approval required for a standard process project, a locality shall not, and this is number 2, it's not number 1, requiring an applicant to provide proprietary, confidential, or other business information to justify the need for the project, including propagation maps and telecommunication traffic studies, or information reviewed by a federal agency as part of the approval process for the same structure and wireless facility, provided that a locality may require an applicant to provide a copy of any approval granted by a federal agency, including the conditions imposed upon by that agency. So that number 2 part of that state code section is why if Verizon or a carrier of your choice were to come to us with an application this year, and Chris is absolutely right, we get reached out to often for people looking, we cannot require them to provide a propagation map to determine whether
They pass it.
Correct. So I would suggest that we specifically state, again, the language that's required to be in the letter to notify the carriers. It's something staff should probably look at, is updating that language so that we aren't asking things that we're not allowed to receive or ask for.
Okay. All right. Appreciate it.
Well, let me hold for, did you have any more questions on that particular?
Not on that
All
particular
right,
one,
well,
though.
let me back up for just a moment, and we'll just hit these one at a time then. Were there any other questions from the commission, any discussion needed on the Virginia Electric and Power CUP request?
Have they ever been turned down on anything?
By whom?
By the board or by anybody around here.
I don't go
I
back
don't
that
think
far.
Virginia Powell's ever been turned down. Whatever they want, they usually get.
Any other questions?
What's is it a capacity, when we reach capacity on these stored 3 pads? At what time do we have nowhere to put spent fuel?
That's what excuse me, Mr. Chairman, that's what's the end state on this?
Yeah.
I'd like to hear the answer to that. But they
that
have,
was
they have
really
updated the CUP now to include pad 3. So if they exceed the capacity of pad 3, I don't know whether they come back early for a CUP before the 7 years are up or what. I really want to know, what is the end state? Where are we going with this?
Well, that was on the question I had. I didn't know where we were on 1 and 2, and when we reach, well, we don't have nowhere to set this spent fuel. What happens then?
It's not going in.
When they run out of pad 3, if the government isn't taking it yet, I'm sure there'll be a pad 4,
Yeah.
And
pad
5,
5.
and 6.
Would you agree, Mr.
All the way
Crowell?
through
I was
2050.
just gonna say, I think that a lot of this is generated because they're changing, their storage processes. The actual, like, when you talk about one of the other sites in Connecticut, it actually looks different. And so in order to, probably move along with this, they probably need that permit, and the language won't change because it's just another way of doing business. To the eyesight, it looks different, and I'm sure it has a higher, and again, I'm not speaking for them, but it has a higher capacity. In order that they can put more in one area than another. And so that probably is probably why this is generated.
It's gonna be there a long time.
What's that?
It's gonna be there a long
Yeah,
time.
gonna be there a long
so yeah, it will
is.
be, yeah, that's probably what's going on. And that's based on what I see.
Right.
But, yeah,
Yeah.
would you agree, John?
Oh, absolutely. It started with vertical storage containers,
Right.
and they shifted to the horizontal storage containers because they could be, theoretically, the plan is they could be set on the rail cars and sent to
Right.
Nevada, and
Yeah,
they
tell me
fit
where
right
it's
into
going,
the
yeah.
storage, permanent storage.
And it's it looks to be a safety, a safer way of unloading and moving the way that they're just
Yeah. The-
sending it out.
If I remember correctly, the vertical ones would have to be reloaded into the horizontal
Right.
in order to ship them
Right.
properly.
And
So
this way they just put them,
Yeah, takes a step out. But again, I don't believe it's been approved yet. One of the last things I did when I worked for them was part of the 60 to 80 year license renewal. That should be approved. It was just, there was a side issue that wasn't probably going to stop it in the end, but Dominion can speak to that. I hadn't been there to hear the rest of it. But you got to have someplace to put fuel. When you take the fuel out, you got to have someplace to put it, and the pool fills up. They shift it outside to the storage facility, and until the government takes it, we just have to have more storage space. That's all there is to it. So every 7 years, they come back for a CUP update.
You remember that time we had 'em with the solar panel thing, and we asked them about how they were gonna fight the fire if that thing lit, and they didn't have an answer? What did they do? They withdrew it. You remember that?
different,
That was the applicant that withdrew that. They
was it?
they
It wasn't
withdrew it,
Virginia
so,
Power?
they withdrew it so we would approve it here, and then they put it back in and took it to the
Oh,
board, and the board
I'm
approved it.
sorry. Yeah.
sidestepping.
Anyway, not that I am concerned.
Say what, Joe?
Can I ask another question that's probably off board right now?
Absolutely, Mr.
Oh.
Wheeler.
Amazon's supposed to be coming in here as another gigantic company. Does the county have any safety sets for if they decide to pull out?
Yeah,
Can
can you elaborate?
Is the county covered if they just decide, hey, we don't wanna come?
Covered how?
Looks like to me you would have to have some kind of,
I mean, we have a performance agreement.
yeah.
We have a water use agreement. So, I mean, there's agreements in place that there are certain thresholds and things that need to be met and things that are bonded and different work. So, yes, I mean, depending on what you're talking about specifically, I think the performance agreement would be something that was done to protect the county.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions on the spent fuel storage conditional use permit this time? All right. How about the Holly Grove Fire Tower? I'm sorry, Holly Grove Fire Department Communications Tower. Any other questions on that?
Just one I was gonna ask in the meeting tonight, and I can ask it now. I didn't see anything about the break point of the tower. I assume that's in place. I didn't see whether, it looks like a tower is 50, 60 feet off the property line.
So, I mean, we discussed that in length. Where we're at right now is we have an RFP out for the design build of it. Basically, we had a firm help us with the technical specs, the location, longitude, latitude, and all that. We know that it's going to have breakpoints that will meet the code requirement. It's just, it is yet to be fully designed.
Okay.
So I can't tell you if the breakpoint's going to be at 18 feet, 32
Everything's on
feet.
paper right now, no design's been done.
Correct. It's the technical specs of what it would end up looking like. And other than that, the design company that we're getting ready to interview next week, we've got a couple lined up. But once we do that, then they'll actually be able to do the full design.
Okay.
This is, the reason why we need to have this done and accomplished is this allows the allowed use in 2232 review would then allow us to finalize the FFA and NEPA study that are required from the federal grant that we've got. So this is the project that we have $1 million grant for the purpose of this tower. And before we can draw down on it, there's certain things that we need to meet, and this is one of them, so they can finalize those reviews and items. So once we get that, then we're able to draw down, and when we can draw down, that's what we will use for the design build.
And I believe the design was mandatory to, when you close to the property line, is the break point needs to
Correct.
avoid that.
Yes, the buildings, yes, all that. It's 110% of from the top to the break point. So this will be a multiple because it's supposed to collapse in on itself, and that's what and the consultants have been working towards in the expectation. So in that RFP, it'll all, like you said, collapse within the fall zone that's required. And this will be a 75 by 75 foot fenced area. It's got the propane tank to run the shed. It's got the generator with all the equipment and everything. So it should be within that fenced area.
Speaking of that, do we want to keep on discussing items that we've got to discuss again? It was, in the conditions, we said something about shielding the view from pedestrians.
Landscaping around the fence.
Yeah. That, I don't know if we want to look at this now or look at it during the public hearing.
So, I mean, that's what we've required of other towers, fencing the,
It was just an odd, look like way to put it. If a fence is supposed to be, I felt it was more for what was inside the compound, the 75 foot by 70 foot space. I guess a fence is supposed to be hiding what a pedestrian can see.
and then the plan is to have some landscape buffered around the fence as well to help obscure
It's
the.
just a comment I had that I hadn't seen it worded that way before, looked like.
It is, Chris is absolutely right. It's a standard condition we've had in others. It can be removed. We just remove it. There is a landscape requirement section of the telecommunications regs, and I don't have it in front of me. I can pull it up, obviously. I think the user has an option to choose between a fence with like slats in it that makes it opaque, or a vegetative screening buffer of a certain composition. So typically, an applicant will choose between those two in order to meet that condition that it's shielded from pedestrian view.
Okay. All right. Mike?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Quarles?
what, shielded from the pedestrian view, what's the purpose of that?
Really cars driving by, or perhaps if it's in an area with residential homes, that people do not see the compound itself. Obviously, you're not going to be able to screen the tower, but that's just been a condition that's been around before I even got here.
I was just trying to drill down and trying to figure out why it's necessary. I mean,
So with these tower facilities, especially the ones like we have that run on propane, so you've got large 1,000-gallon propane tank that runs a shed that's not very pretty, because really all it houses is a generator with some equipment to continue the tower operating.
long story short, from an aesthetic.
It looks better if it's got some vegetation around the fence than looking at a propane tank in a
Okay,
larger shed.
thank you.
All right. So no other questions on that. Items 3 and 5 are Ag and Forestal District items. Were there any questions that we needed to look at on those?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Goodwin?
All technical questions. First of all, I think it's the first time we've seen the impact on public services that you and I worked on some months ago.
We've had,
We've had
several applications have had it, yes, sir.
This, presuming that this is gonna result in a single-family dwelling.
Sorry.
Which one are you on? I'm sorry, sir.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm sorry.
Isn't that gonna have an impact if we use the average times figures that we came up with school and fire?
This use, would it require CUP or rezoning, or would it be allowed by right for them to develop?
I think with the zoning, if they're taking it out of the ag and forestall district with the idea that their son is gonna live on it, have that 10 acres. I presume the plans are for him to build on that 10 acres. And therefore, there should be some impact on services as we pass those formula.
So Renee is the case manager for that, but I'm going to go ahead and take a stab at answering that, and I might have to pull Renee up here. Right now, the property owner, without carving anything out of the AFD district, could apply for a family subdivision by right for the son. They are asking to not do that and instead pull 10 acres out and do a regular division. So if the recommendation from the Planning Commission or Board of Supervisors is to not pull the 10 acres out of the AFD, they could, by right, do a family division. They're just trying to save their division. So it's a you're absolutely correct. I think the intent, the Colemans aren't here yet this evening to confirm, is to build a residential home. Could it have an impact on services? It could.
I wonder if we're really comfortable with when are we gonna apply those formula and when we're not, since this one's not straight up asking for a single family. He could be put in a radish farm for all I know, but I'm presuming he is. And therein lies the impact, which will just go on down the rails, because we'll never get a chance to look at it again.
This will be something when we talk about the comprehensive plan update. The by right allowed uses throughout the county is something that we've got, the impacts that are going to be done by these things.
Okay.
For CUP or rezoning or otherwise, we can ask how they're going to mitigate their impact. But if it's a by right use, they have a by right ability, because the intent is that the Planning Commission and Board had planned the county in such a way that would allow for this type of development in these areas. So if we need to work on that when the comp plan comes up, that is part of the conversation we need to have. What are allowed by right uses and what are things that we may need to amend that we are currently doing to address
One other
that?
technical question.
Can I follow up on your question before you get there? Unless you'd rather go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah, but it's a follow-up.
So I understand what you're saying. However, right now, assuming it's strictly by the book, then they can't take this out until the district time finishes, however long that is.
Without action
Now,
from,
And
the
at that point, they could take it out and they could do a by right. But what they're asking to do now is to take it out now, and I don't know how long it is between now and then when it ends, because they want to preserve their family division rights, which means they would get this right, this division, plus the family divisions. So it might be more than, and in the end, it probably won't be more than can be done there, but still, the impact is the impact. I mean, you could take the family division right and move forward right now, and everything's fine. But, you know, this stuff gets put in, I mean, I get it, I understand there are limitations on it, but it gets put into an ag and forestal district for a purpose, and now you're gonna take it out. Well, the rules for taking it out, and you want to take it out early, fine. I mean, there's a family division right that's allowed, but if you want to go the other way, I mean, you're going to have your family division rights, plus here's some more division rights. So, which, I don't know.
It's a
Maybe
plus, it's a +1
it's,
situation.
and it's all timing. I mean, if there's 9 years left in the district, then 9 years from now, it doesn't matter, because they could still do that. If it's 1 year, then 1 year from now, they could still do that. It's really just a timing issue, but I don't know. I mean,
The district just renewed 2 years ago, so there's still 8
years,
years
yeah.
left.
yeah.
To me, it's a cake and eat it too type of a request.
Trying to
Maybe.
circumvent the process.
Pardon?
Trying to circumvent the
Some-
process.
Somewhat, yeah.
But do we have any ability to, I mean, you enter it voluntarily. If we start telling people you can't get out of it, people are not gonna get in it at all. So I'm not sure whether,
Well, yeah,
what is our,
of course,
what can we do about this?
Of course, the interesting thing is, it's really state law, right? Help me out here. Mr. Realtor. I mean, it's state, we're just following
Yeah.
the state law on this thing.
That's the way the report read. I took the report to say
Oh,
they can get one division, whether that's family division, correct me if I'm wrong. If they take a family division now, they have no more division rights within that, is that correct?
Under the family subdivision regulations, each qualifying family member gets one family subdivision right per locality.
Per
So
locality.
if they did this family subdivision to their son now, he would not have the ability to get another family subdivision parcel in Louisa County. And they own considerable amount of acreage, and they wanted to keep that family subdivision right, should in the future he want a different parcel once he got older.
Yeah,
to build in a different
so
location.
So they use that now, they're done. So
They're
to,
not using it, that's why they wanna.
well, I
They're doing an
understand
end
that.
run.
I understand that. And I kind of support it, because they're kind of twixt and tween. I mean, they got all this land farming that they put in the ag and forest district. Now they want to cut off a piece for one of the children to continue doing what they're doing. And it's a little catch-22 here, look like, on how they can do that. But I see what y'all are saying too. It's cake and eat it too, but it's
hard.
it's, if they got more than one child, or it can be a sister or something, I guess, then if they take that right now, that right to do a family division, then they have no more rights, correct?
Well,
that
this,
one child.
this child would not be able to.
Just that
rec-
child?
Right,
Okay. So another child can get a,
right,
Well, then with their divisions, they also only have a certain number of divisions, correct?
correct.
So they would be using one of their divisions.
Okay, so I didn't interpret the way that was in there. So if that's the case, if they got 3 children and they do a family division now, then they still can get another family division later by right.
To another child.
Yeah, to another
child.
child in the Ag and Forest District. And that changes it,
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
you know?
Mr. Chairman.
But it's
Mr.
all,
Quarles.
excuse me.
So how many divisions are possible? Say we have 10 children.
So the way the ordinance is currently written, family subdivisions don't count towards available division rights or divisions, and the property is A1, I believe, yes. So the A1 district does not allow for any type of division that qualifies as a subdivision. So essentially, they could have 2 lots and a residue parcel, and the residue would have to be over 5 acres with over 400 feet of road frontage and an existing VDOT-approved entrance. Oh, that makes sense.
We got approved entrance or,
What do the people have any idea of what this red tape is gonna be like if they wanna withdraw this stuff from a forestal district?
They do.
I mean, when they put it in, they know,
Yes.
They're very aware. We've had many conversations with the owners, and they will be here tonight. They were at the review committee meeting as well. And to give a little more background on the application, the original application was to remove the entire parcel from the Ag Forestal District. And the property owner stated to the review committee that once the division was done, that they would reapply to put their property back into the district. So that is why between staff and the committee, we talked about only removing a portion of the parcel instead of the entire parcel in order for them to do the division. They are looking and have stated in that meeting 5 acres, but the committee talked about doing up to 10 just because of access and that sort of thing to get to where they want to do the division. It may be that the son, once the division is done, would reapply to put that parcel back into the district. But the owners indicated to the committee that their plan was, once the division was done, to put their part back into the district. So that's why the recommendation was not for the whole parcel, but only for a portion for the division.
Ms. Buckler, so, and we have land in Ag and Forestal, so I understand putting it in. My understanding was the only way by the law to remove from Ag and Forestal was either to have the period expire for the district, and you have a question then, do you want to reapply, or to sell the parcel, and when the parcel is sold, the new owner has the option to put it in, take it out, whatever. Are there any other methods to remove according to the law?
I believe death of a
Death of
family.
divorce.
Well, yeah, just trying to get the official answer right here from,
What was brought up at the review committee meeting is that the code says for good and reasonable cause, that it can be withdrawn.
okay.
So the committee felt,
I'm glad it's clearly defined.
yes.
before you can start taking notice any length of time it has to be in there.
Well,
Yeah.
there is a time period that is established when the district is created. And then if someone wants to withdraw prior to that expiration, then it has to go through the committee and the planning commission and the board for the determination of whether it's for good and reasonable cause.
Mr. Quarles, you were
okay.
in process.
So-
When I interrupted you, my apologies.
No, that's fine. So barring road frontage and all these different quantifiers, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, you know, these people have a lot of land, so they might have a lot of road frontage. So, back to the child situation. I mean, where does that stop, or is there a limit there, or?
There's no limit if they
we got
had
enough
10
road frontage
children
and everything
or,
else, we're good.
or 20 children. Each child could receive a family subdivision parcel, but just one in the county.
Just one. Thank you.
Any other questions on,
Well, I just go back to what was previously saying. I don't know why they wouldn't take advantage of the family subdivision if they're not losing their rights. I mean, that's that's when I looked at it, that's what I interpreted, because I didn't understand why they wouldn't, if they're allowed to. If they got more children, that still can get more division rights. Why?
Mr. Barlow?
We run into that where people, if there's with the division surveys, a child could do, or the parent could deed their son, daughter, a parcel by family division. But, and that's a one-time thing in the county, like Ms. Buckler said. But if they utilize the division survey, which you can do in the A1, they could cut that lot off. It wouldn't be a subdivision, and that child would preserve that lot, the family division exemption, if they decided later on they wanted to build somewhere else. So what these people, I think, are trying to do is preserve the ability for that child that gets a one-time family division to have that option again somewhere else, especially if they own a lot of land. So I think that's what they're trying to do. It's not that they can't do the family division, they can do that.
Yep.
They just want to preserve, they want to cut this division off and preserve that family division exemption for somewhere later on, if needed.
Did they give a reason why?
Basically, exactly what Mr. Barlow explained, and they will be here, and, they can, explain further but that is exactly what they've said, is that they wanted to preserve that family subdivision right for
The
this,
same
right, for this
son or
child.
daughter, whichever it is, to make a change down the road. Okay. Now I got it. Whose district is this?
I don't know.
Yours, Mr. Chairman.
That Gold Mine
Gold
Creek?
Mine Creek?
Yours.
It's that.
Mr. Chairman, I have one other technical question. We don't know where the 10 acres is. It's just a maximum of 10 acres, is that correct?
That is correct.
Is there any possibility that pulling this 10 acres out will somehow violate the requirements for being contingent or the proximity requirements for the entire district?
No, sir.
Okay,
And
that's
they're
all I need.
actually, it's not in the package because we received it afterwards, but in the PowerPoint, they did give us a very rough sketch of where they want to do the division, and staff interpreted that, and which they agreed was the approximate location to meet the road frontage. So that, I don't know if,
I mean, this is a huge AFD, so I wouldn't think 10.
It will not affect any
Invalidate any of the.
any core minimums of the 200 acres, the 1 mile from the core,
That's all I got.
any of that.
That's all I had on that one.
Very good. Any on the Inez AFD? Before we move on.
I'll just ask questions
Brooks?
now besides later. You said the people that had wanted to keep theirs in the Inez Ag District, but now since the core's going away, then they can't attach on to that. Did they qualify to attach to the Shelton Mill? Or if they chose to, I think you said they hadn't made a decision yet.
Correct. The state code was amended a couple of years ago. It used to be that you had to be within 1 mile of the core, and now you do not have to be within 1 mile if it is determined to be agriculturally or forestally significant land. So there is a questionnaire that she would need to fill out to come with her application, but when we spoke with her, she had not made a decision on
Oh,
whether
okay.
she wanted to reapply or for an addition to the
Okay.
Shelton's Mill.
So that 1 mile thing is, you got a way to get around that in this
Correct.
situation. Okay. Thank you.
So they're removing here, right? They're making a removal of the Inez.
Yeah.
Correct. There
the
were only
code.
2 property owners in the
They're not trying to
Inez.
join another.
Not yet. Correct.
Okay.
All right. Let's move on then to the Technology Overlay District, item 4. Any questions on that? Mr. Goodwin?
Again, I'm taking a lot of time here, but
That's all
they're
right.
technical questions. Talk to me about Shannon Hill. Since we are setting up water infrastructure to go to Shannon Hill, including a tower, and we've got gas there, why are we interested in pulling that out? I understand the other districts, but I don't understand the rationale, especially when we're invested in the business park.
Shannon Hill has a CUP that allows data centers. Shannon Hill CUP allows for data centers already.
But why are we taking it out of the TOD?
The other items, that was recommendation based on the CUP that is already in existence at Shannon Hill for the businesses that were trying to be attracted. So the Shannon Hill already has a CUP with allowable uses that we would anticipate the county trying to attract.
Okay, another question, please.
Mr. Goodwin?
I'm not comfortable with putting in a CUP for one of, I'll call it the major uses, and then allowing without any review the ancillary uses, I'm trying to find it now, on the next page, which are about 12 of them.
So if you go back to packet page 78,
Okay,
section 86334, which is accessory uses, we've added the language in there which support, and we struck through permitted uses to support uses with the issuance of a conditional use permit expressed above.
and thereby for authorized and by right in the TOD. That's 12 by right expansions over what we may see in the CUP applications without us knowing, and there's no way we can,
We need to strike are hereby authorized, or by right in the TOD.
Yes.
I would say
That's
I would like to see by right taken out.
Correct.
And ancillary permitted uses will be covered in the issuance of the conditional use permit. Because there's no way we can do a decent estimate of the impact on the county when we got 12 things out there flying around and we don't even know what they are.
Like I said, the by right was the oversight, the remove permitted use and with the issuance of a conditional use permit. So my understanding, which legal may have to jump in here, is that to require a conditional use permit for item 86333, if they receive a conditional use permit, then they would be able to do the uses, those 12 uses you're talking about, because it's ancillary to the use above. So because of that, that's why CUP is going to be required for the above use. They would just be able to use those additional items if they had obtained a CUP.
Why,
It's not by right without the use above. It's not by right in general. It's only by right if it's adjoining the uses above.
I understand that. I am questioning whether we are doing the right thing to allow them to grow as many as, first of 11, the other one has got to be approved by the Board of Supervisors, when each one of those could have a different impact on public services, which we are trying to evaluate when somebody puts a CUP in.
So we would have to discuss that when the items in 86-333 come before Planning Commission and the board, they would just need to include those other items that they plan on doing. But it would be.
That's what I'm proposing, that when you put in the CUP for one of these half a dozen, you've got to specify what other ancillary permitted uses you intend to take advantage of. So when we look at the CUP, we're looking at it in totality and not handing them this blank check for the
So
rest of
then
this
you're
stuff.
recommending striking all of 86-334 and just having them included in the CUP.
Exactly. That's what, I mean, I don't know how everybody else feels about it, but when I read this, that just scared me.
Well, the text here does not require the uses in 86-334 to come before anybody
What's it-
if you
it's on
have
that
approval
last one.
for a use in 86-333. So you go in and say, I want to approve a conference or training center under 86-333, you get the approval for that. Now you've got by right
Which one are
use
you talking about?
I don't know.
For 11 things.
for 11 things.
All right.
But they have to have an
Fee
existing
schedule.
CUP in hand before they could use any of those.
Well, you'd have the CUP, and now you have to have a
Right.
CUP in hand for the item under 86-333.
Correct.
So they go and they get the CUP for the training center. And then after that, then they can do any of these 11 items here that they've never mentioned
Agenda I was
before.
on. That's just the
That,
agenda.
you know, we're gonna now, oh yeah, we're gonna throw in a food service facility. Well, you never mentioned that. Or, we're gonna put our telecommunications towers in, you know, however tall or whatever we wanna do, but you never mentioned that when you got the CUP for the training center. Well, we didn't have to, we just got the CUP
Well-
for that, but now we got a by right use because of that.
I think, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Coons, that I think when the CUP comes in, it's got to address which of these 11 they would like to take
I-
advantage of.
Based on what you're saying, the recommendation is to remove that entire section. That's what
I
I'm
think-
hearing you saying, because if
I
they
think-
need to address it during the CUP, there's no sense
I
in
think
having
those
an own
uses have to be
section.
laid out. If you intend to do any of the following items as a, whatever it's called, a accessory use, those uses must be identified in the.
Well, that's what I'm
CUP.
saying. So
Yeah.
if we just strike the entire section here, then they would have to address it in the CUP, and they could only get an approval for what the CUP approves specifically.
They must
So that would address your question, because if you want it to come up during the CUP process, specifically what they're gonna use, then we just,
What page? What page y'all, are y'all looking at the work session or the
Page-
packet?
It's 73 in the work
73.
session,
And-
it's
and-
probably 78 in the other one.
I have the regular agenda, so it's
That's all right.
78 in the regular agenda.
78 in the regular, 73 in the work session.
See, I'm trying to do this on the fly, but I would suggest that the wording should say the following auxiliary
I
uses.
don't have a set.
By right, that's their issue.
Which
That's what I'm
support
saying.
uses with the
And then
issuance
if they want it to be in the
additional
CUP,
use permit must be specific,
But that's the
must be
problem. They don't want
specified
any of
in
these
the
uses without
conditional
coming
use
from
permit.
so then we just need to strike the whole thing.
See what's on
That's-
77.
So these things are by right if you have one of these.
If you want those items to be discussed during CUP, we can just strike that whole section.
And then you can do whatever you want.
That would be the recommendation if you want it to be discussed specifically at the CUP.
And make it.
Or strike specific items, but it sounds like for every single one, you would like it to be discussed at CUP. You might,
All of these
you might as well
devices,
just strike that whole
regular
section.
and accessory are all required by
So
statute.
now the TOD would require a CUP for those uses, and then it would have to include any ancillary uses for that.
I mean, if that's the way you think it's the best way to do it.
Based on what you're stating and what you'd like to accomplish,
We're gonna
that's,
get there.
I'm only one of seven here,
One
but
fight at a
The
time.
problem is,
I don't have the
I don't
other
have it in my packet.
commissioners
I don't know
feel
what
about
y'all
it.
talking
There
about.
it is right there.
Well, my packet's right there.
Where's your paper packet?
I guess I better go in here and find it.
Guess you better.
That's 73.
Those electrons are
It
letting you down.
was on 98.
Oh, wait a minute.
Sheets.
Was this the set that was left out of the electronic package? I think this was a set of information left out of the electronic package
That's what I-
that came in later, that came, yeah.
Ah.
Look in your
I
paper.
saw that and I said, I need to check into that tomorrow.
Look in the paper, old man.
You are
I got it
way
on
too
mine.
technically advanced.
Yeah,
We all have paper copies.
I'm sorry.
I don't know how everybody else feels about it, but I'm uncomfortable just leaving that as wide open.
It's not, I don't think,
They're not comfortable.
it reads to me like it was intended to be something else,
73 and
but they didn't
74.
think it all the way through.
I don't know how the other
But I agree
commissioners
with
feel
you.
about it.
Yeah.
If you all agree to taking out,
Goodness.
It's the first time I've seen it, so I have no opinion right now.
Control, they can be trying to do things.
he's suggesting taking the whole subparagraph A out.
Well, whole section, 86,
section A.
334, based on your statements.
Okay?
So would you take the 12 uses there, or actually 11 uses? I mean, I don't understand why you have other approved by the board. It all has to be approved by the board anyway, is the direction you're going here.
Remember,
but-
this is an amendment to the existing TOD, which allowed it by
They
right.
showed it.
So that's why, unless it was approved by the board, we are now amending it. And now that there's an amendment in front of you, that's one of the items that other ancillary uses, so if it's not included,
Accessory use.
they'd have to come up. But, like I said, based on what you're saying, we just need to strike 86, 334.
Well, do you want to include those particular 11 or 12 uses under 86-333 as part of? Or is that just something that would
That's-
have to come up? I mean, we're not even going to talk
Ba-
about those ancillary uses
I mean,
at all.
based on the statement that was just made, that for any of those 12 items, that they should have to speak about it during the CUP process, there's no reason to include.
Yeah,
I'd like to hear what other people think. That's just my opinion.
let's start with our counsel, our learned counsel, and his opinion.
Well, good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, or I should say the commission, excuse me. I think you're right, Commissioner, when you speak to whether or not the accessory permitted uses would be permitted by right without an additional need for a conditional use permit. The only point that I'll make, and I think the language supports it, is that on that first line, the ancillary uses which support the issuance of a conditional use permit are the ones noted above. So I think their applicant would too have to make some kind of argument that, Mr. Chairman, for your example, that a telecommunications tower was needed to support the training center. So I think that's the only kind of constriction on the text. But I think you're right. If you're looking to remove that opportunity for these accessory uses to be permitted by right with that one constriction, that you'd have to remove the section or some other way put it into the 86-333.
Well, if I were to come in again with my training center and get my training center approved, and then next year it's like, oh, we'd like to have a telecommunication tower to go with that because we want to connect to the world and 3 other planets or something. And, you know, I've got this
Right.
vast array of telecommunication stuff to put in. It appears to me that it's all by right now. And I really don't have to come back.
I think you'd
here.
have to argue that piece there, whether or not it's in support of that particular use. You might have to seek a determination. I mean, it's
But
a
if
little
it
bit
is in
gray.
support, it's by right.
Correct, correct,
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah.
So what do we need to do? We need to approve this and send it to the board and let them hash out all this mess.
No, I think we need to send
we
a
need to
recommendation
fix
to the
it.
board with what we think the hash out should be.
Exactly.
That's what's gonna happen. I guarantee you.
Hard to predict what
One
the other
quick
6
question for our
might do.
learned counsel before you.
Yes,
So the quickest way to clean this up would just be to remove that whole paragraph?
I think that's right. The intention is to
I'm with you.
remove the opportunity for this to be done by right, then absolutely, you could simply remove that section, was it 334, and either subsume that into 333, or remove it altogether.
Thank you very much.
I have no opinion.
So I think the easiest way to remove.
well, we can remove it. The only, I don't want to get back into the kind of question we dealt with last month with things that don't appear in a use table somewhere. So, because some of these things don't have a definition, even though it was requested last year, but we didn't get definitions for all of them. And I don't think they all appear in a matrix table. So, if they are in support of, I would say maybe the best thing to say is to fix the text in paragraph A that says the following ancillary uses which support permitted uses under 86-333 also require CUP. Something as simple as
Must be
that.
included in the,
Must be included in the application or require CUP in case they think of it later and say, we
Right.
gotta come back and get a CUP. And that
But
way,
what-
that you have these things, you know that they're only there to support the uses, and you know you have to come back for a CUP, and you're done.
So just add ancillary uses to 86-333 and then list the items.
Could you,
However it best works.
So you
But
want
that
it-
would be the recommendation.
yeah, I think,
Yeah.
I think you get what we're trying to drive at.
Mr. Barlow?
But
is there a way to word that such that, getting to George's point, that the uses would be listed in the original CUP?
I think the simplest way to do that is just to include those uses in 333, which would require all those things being, a CUP being necessary for each and one of those uses. So that would avoid the second, the two-step you would have to go with getting a CUP and then getting another CUP for an accessory use.
And I'll just give you an example. What we're doing right now for the East End Radio Tower, we are getting a CUP for the civic use that's required in the agriculture zoning, since it's owned by the county, as well as the wireless facilities communication. So this CUP is addressing both of them. So it's the same thing. We would do it where the accessory uses would require it so that, like you said, that it's included in that CUP. And then at which point they want to add something in the future, they would have to come amend the existing CUP.
And I think I'll note too, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe in any other portion of the ordinance is an accessory use where you require CUP to obtain an accessory use to a use already permitted by right. So I think it would be an additional confounding point if we were to make that two-step in this section here.
What he said.
That's the best way to say it.
What he said.
Any other questions on,
So does that sound like the amendment?
I think it sounds like a proper plan.
I think just all those uses should be included in no accessory use.
Well, that's,
But
so we'll,
thank you. Yeah.
we'll strike
Thank you.
86-334.
So,
Just move the uses up, so there won't be any of that paragraph at all.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Coombs, as part of the presentation for the official meeting at 7 o'clock, could you suggest that after discussion at the work session, there's been an item noted here that needs adjustment, and you're bringing revised words for our consideration that match what we just talked about? And that way,
I will speak of it. Yes, sir. I don't know if, Tom, can you try and change that language?
well, I'm not saying we necessarily have to have a nice typed-up piece of paper in front of us, but if we have
We could get
a
to it.
marked-up thing that we can say, yep, here we go, that would be good. At least something we can see on the screen. And we can say, yes, that's what we have in mind.
you just open that line.
Yeah,
That's it.
that's
These
it.
just fall under the list.
Okay.
Are you striking A?
All right.
Are you striking A?
Yeah.
We're gonna see what he says.
86,
We're gonna see what he says.
334.
But it's all gonna wind up requiring a CUP.
Okay.
Okay?
You okay with this, we were talking about?
And then just a reminder for TOD as well.
I guess it's all right. I'm not inclined to support it anyway. I wouldn't have supported it when it came out, when it created the districts. I don't think that we now can take it back from the public. We gave it to them. I think we should have made them mind up when we gave it to them, and now we're coming back and want to take it back. I don't support that.
I'd be in favor of taking the whole thing away all the way back to
Well,
last year.
see,
but,
and
you
that's
know,
the page I'm on, so, and we're just
Well,
that naps now.
Yeah.
We've already done it.
I understand.
I mean, that's my position. That's why I really haven't journeyed into your conversational life. I should have been here for the first party.
Yes, you should have.
Good.
All right, then with nothing else on that right now, we can move on to the last item, which is schedule of fees.
And ready to answer any questions?
I have one, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brooks?
Did we do any comparisons with adjoining counties on fees?
None.
So we went in looking to
Try and cover our costs
build a
based.
bank account up a little bit to cover some of the costs.
No, the thing that's happening right now is that individuals that are using the community development services are getting more than they're paying for. So it's being subsidized by other tax revenues in the general fund. So this is a situation where community development is something that an individual is using that service specifically, so they should cover the cost for that service. And that's not happening now, so we evaluated the uses and services that we have that are not, the cost is a significant amount more than what we're charging right now.
And the last time we raised fees were
2022 for building, and I think it was in the, because we didn't address the planning and zoning in 2022 when we reevaluated and redid them, so that's why there's a lot of planning and zoning in there. So for example, like a CUP application, that's when you add the neighborhood meeting, planning commission meetings, the letters to adjoiners, ads, board of supervisors, pre-application meetings, that 750 is used fairly quickly. And then you've got a lot of work that's being done by staff that has got to be funded somehow. So like I said, this is, the sole intent is to have individuals that are utilizing the service cover the cost for the service.
It just, that CUP can be such a wide difference between a basic, what I call a basic CUP, and one, $2,500 for some CUPs seems extreme to me. But I know some of these others, especially now we got more uses that are being put in the category you can have it with a CUP. It's creating a lot of work. It's just the same thing as a rezoning, the same process.
Just an example, I'll say, a couple years ago, or a year ago, the individuals that came to have the livestock in the C2 in Gum Springs,
Oh, yeah.
the board did waive the fee for that. So situations like that do come up where the board can vote to waive a fee. But like I said, we've got a plan that it's going to cost more than that for staff time, and right now it is costing more than that for staff time. Or it's costing about that for most.
I think Mr. Brooks brought up a really good point, and that is the one that you talked about that we ended up waiving was just somebody that wants to have some livestock in the front part of their property, C2. So, and the schedule, would the fee schedule be the same for that CUP application as compared to something like Love's, for instance?
Yes, because it's still a CUP.
So
There's no
no
way for us to
differentiation.
differentiate.
And that creates I can understand what we're trying to do. We shouldn't be spending all this time and effort and expense. But that's a broad brushstroke.
The applicant can also request from the Board of Supervisors to waive that fee before they file the CUP. So, I mean, that is an option that they have. It's just, like I said, we have to treat every application the same. So, any utility scale solar to Love's Truck Stop to anything else that were to come for a CUP, as well as some of the smaller items. So it's just.
You said you can request a waiving the fee. That's done on the front end or after the fact?
They could do it on the front end. And I think, like you said, I think staff would be more than happy that if it's an individual that it's a very minor CUP, but it is a CUP nonetheless, that.
Some mechanism needs to be in place to give us that flexibility, because we might not have you here, Mr. Coon, to make a good practical decision down the road somewhere. We need something that protects those people, like we're talking about down there last year.
Like I said, I mean, the Virginia code allows them to request the waiver from the board. So it's already established, and, I mean, if we want to put it somewhere in the fee schedule, I'm more than happy to add it somewhere.
Well, I'll see what the rest of the commissioners say. It's just, I don't know if one size fits all.
And
And maybe in y'all's perspective, it makes no difference. You gotta go through some of the same.
we have to do the same work now, the number of adjoining property owners and the number of impacts and the mitigation, yes, that is different, but the process is still the process for CUP.
So if you want to get this fee waived, you got to go before the Board of Supervisors.
Which the board has done before.
How long will that take a person?
So just for a waiver, I mean, that's something that they could put the request in and go to the next board meeting. I mean, that's not something that would take very long at all. It's not, because that's waiving a fee, doesn't require public hearing, doesn't require adjacent property owners. It's just asking, I would like to do this on my property, and I'm asking to waive it. So, I mean, that's something someone can request to get on the agenda for that purpose. No.
Mr. Goodwin?
I may have missed this because we were in discussion. If you had applied these increases over the last 2 fiscal years, what would the gap be? 0?
Over the last I would have to go back and pull the number.
It says in here that in FY '23, funding gap was 194,000 figures. And in FY '24, it's 141,800 and some figures. So if we applied this, is that 0?
I would have to pull it specifically for the 2 fiscal years.
And the other thing,
And just to answer your point real quick, we also don't include vehicle maintenance or fuel costs in the operating budget for community development. So that's something that's already being covered by the general fund outside of the other costs. So there's already a difference that's in there. And the other item that we have is that delta. We had the vacancy savings, if y'all remember, between Savannah and Curtis leaving. And then this year we had Josh had left for about a month and a half before we ended up bringing Linda on. So we have had some pretty substantial vacancy savings that, without it, that difference would be a little bit greater.
the reason I'm asking is that this letter, with the exception of the dates and the data for the fiscal years, is almost identical to the one we looked at, 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
And it was the same thing. We got to eliminate the gap, but we didn't do it.
Correct.
So I have a very, very, I think, pertinent question. Does this eliminate the gap or not?
So
Because I don't want to come back here in a year and up the fees again and come back, fix the problem, and let's move on.
So there's no way I can answer the question of what applications will come in the door. And that's that we're trying our best to get as close to cost neutral as possible. What we've done is we've looked at the items that normally take longer than, $75 permit fee. If it takes 3 or 4 hours plus an inspector going out there, it costs more than $75 for us to do that. Same thing with the CUP, based on the neighborhood meetings, the planning commission meetings, the board, it normally costs more than $750 once how much time Tom or Josh or Linda spend on it. So that's the items we focused on. Now, we very well may go in the next year not have another CUP or rezoning come before us, and we have one of these other items that we really don't have a lot right now. So the best thing that we can do is evaluate and try and have the service cost what it costs us. But I understand your frustration, but this is also something that a lot of localities do the fee schedules every single year. They have a running sheet and tally it, and every year they amend it based on what's coming in. It's something that we haven't done, but I do think with us and the frequency that we want to look at the comprehensive plan and make updates to make sure we're up to date, that this might be something we need to look at on a more regular basis.
I'm not disagreeing, but I'm also not understanding, because we used to regularly get reports of, and maybe, I think there was quarterly, we've had so many applications come in. And it's was part of the update. So I ought to be able to see the data that says, is FY '23 and FY '24, is it part of a continuing trend? And can I expect that to continue with any, based on what I can go back the last 10 years and look at, with any type of, certainty is not the word, but confidence, to know that, well, number one, 23 and 24 were not anomalies, and the next thing I want to know is, does it eliminate the gap? And that should not be impossible to get.
I mean, one of the things I'll speak to is new single-family dwellings. We were averaging about 5 site inspections because now people are using more subcontractors. We're closer to 7 or 8.
Okay.
And if they go back to not requiring 7 or 8, then it's going to change. So, I mean, like I said, this is one of the reasons why we're trying to account for it, is that how the current practices are being done change the way we need to look at the billing or the fee schedules. So it's just costing us more
I'm
than.
not trying to be hard, Chris, I'm really not. But if you can't tell me that this takes us to 0, how in the heck did you come up with these figures?
Like I said,
One of them has got to relate directly to the other one, and I'm not seeing the information here that says that.
if you would like to see all of my methodology and everything, I would have to provide that to you all, and we can table it and discuss it next month.
I'll leave that up to the other commissioners. I mean, this is the same question I think that I asked 2 years ago, and it was too difficult to answer then. And if we can't say it takes us to 0, then I don't know how we came up with these increases as a basis. I just,
Like I said, if you'd like to table it till next month, I can show you my methodology for everything, and we can discuss it then.
I'm one person. I'll leave it up to,
Well,
I have a question
Mr. Kersey.
along a little bit different line. Is there any way to streamline your process? You mentioned 7 subcontractors. Could we limit
That-
or charge by subcontractor so that they recognize the fees that they're paying and that the public is adding to the costs themselves, that we're not just raising the rates, but choices you make in your building process will dictate what those charges are?
That could be an option, yes, sir.
I mean, I just think probably we do need to look at streamlining the process if we want to reduce it. I'm not opposed to the public having input, like with Loves, we have all these public meetings, but that's adding to our cost. And are we really generating any additional information in having all these meetings? I mean, someone else may want to weigh in on that, but I would question that there may be some duplication in these meetings. I know years ago, we had meetings at the courthouse, and that was it. And you got it together and presented at the public hearing and voted up or down. And now we have a very broad process and add to the cost. And each year we raise taxes and say, well, the taxpayer can pay it, I guess. So I just bring a different perspective. Not that mine is the only one, but I just ask that we maybe look at that.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Quarles.
Chris, so when you look at, along the same vein as Mr. Kersey says, what do other localities do? Did we ever look at that to see, I mean, obviously, we don't want to make it harder to do business here.
I mean, it ranges from every single locality so we've got it different where there's a minimum, and then you've got, based on finished square footage, it's a certain price per square foot, and you've got it that way. I mean, there's several different factors that different people use. It's just.
I was just speaking more about the number of, charging based on the number of subcontractors. Is that kind of?
Well, the number of individual inspections, the number of, for example, one of the things you could do is say, okay, for a new single-family home, if, like what we have presented, $1,500 is the minimum, so that would be 5 inspections. And for any additional inspections, it would end up being an additional $200 or whatever it ends up being. Because, I mean, that's the whole thing. Where we're at right now is for $1,500, they get the building plan reviewed, and then they get those 7 to 8 inspections. Now, of course, if they fail inspections or they're not ready, things like that, there are things in here that address those. But
The additional.
for every single inspection, we don't have a bill for that. Where if it's like an addition or renovation, it's treated a little bit differently. But how we've chose to do it in the past was single-family dwelling was all lumped together, and then that included all the permits and inspections and reviews that you needed. So it's just, that's how we've done it in the past, but
My
So maybe,
CUP office.
if you did limit it to a certain amount of inspections and a certain amount of subs, that might help you recoup some of your
I need a refund.
unexpected costs.
I mean, that is an option, yes.
Go back and ask for a waiver.
Mr. Coombs, in your evaluation that produced these numbers, these suggested increases, did you do an analysis of what the, say, the average time for each type of job you have in here is right now? The average time spent for review, the average time spent on inspection, the average time, and correlate that to the cost of the people doing that, so they come up with an understanding of what each one of these actually costs?
That is the thought process behind it, how long it takes, and include some of the other items. So, for example, neighborhood meeting that Tom has to be here from 4 to 6. It's 2 hours for the neighborhood meeting on top of any other review or staff work that's done. Things like that. So yes, that's the general review of it, as well as providing Linda and John Grubbs reviewing it to see their input on those different items as well. So we've had multiple staff input as well.
You have to change all of the schedule in order to reach a positive?
No, I mean, we could probably put a whole lot in new single-family dwelling, leave everything else the same. But then, like I mentioned earlier, is if we don't have any new single-family homes, hypothetically, then it wouldn't necessarily cover the cost, because it could be just elsewhere. So, I mean, theoretically, yes, we could.
Gary.
Any other questions on this particular item?
One last
Mr. Goodwin?
question. You mentioned something about deferring this, and if you could come back and explain your methodology and maybe zero in a little bit more on these numbers. That, like I said, my main thing is just take us to zero. Is that something that you can do? Is it something that you're recommending that give you a little time and you can address it better?
Like I said, not expecting to have the methodology called into question. I didn't write it down
Right.
in a format that would be in a staff review. So yes, I would need a month to be able to provide that to you all.
Thank you. And I'll leave it up to the other six as to what they want to do. I really would like to know where this takes us in relation to zero. I agree with you that the person being served should be the one to pay for the services and not the general taxpayer. Just want to make sure that this gets us where we need to be. And I would just like to have a little bit more information. I'm willing to come in and your office if that's an easier way to do it. If the whole commission would like to hear it, then whatever. But I'd like to not be here next year looking at a fee increase or the year after and still not know. Same justification, we gotta cover the gap, but still not know if we're covering it.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Quarles?
based on the guess based on the shortages that we have as far as this staff, I don't know that I view this as something that personally I want Chris to have to decipher based on all the things that other things that we got going on. I don't think that this is, to me, that kind of item that derails him from his work schedule. And then the rest of the staff trying to prepare this for this one item. That's just my comment.
One other thing strikes me, Mr. Goodwin, in considering if this schedule change took us to 0 today, we still live in a world of inflation that's more than just a little bit these past few years and maybe into the next few years. That being the case, salaries are increasing more than they did at one time. If salaries increase at all between this year and next year, theoretically, we will not be at 0 next year, because all of this effectively, aside from, the maintenance and travel and that kind of thing, but all of this is man hours. So every time we have a pay increase, and I'm not advocating for a 0 pay increase. I'm just making an observation. Just making an observation. If you don't change your salary, if you don't change your fee schedule to match your salary increases, at least, you're not going to be at 0. So you're either going to have to overshoot and let it come up to meet 0, or you're going to have to accept an undershoot and catch it up. It's it's not that you can be absolutely at 0 each year, but just recognizing, will we be back here? Likely we will, particularly if inflation keeps going the way it has been.
Mr. Chair, go ahead.
Mr. Goodwin.
Well, with respect to that, we already know what those salaries going to be for the next fiscal year, because the General Assembly's finished their work on the budget, and the governor and the board has already done its budget. So we already know what it is, and we don't have to look back and say, oh gosh, we need to catch up again. We should have included that in this, so that we'll be at 0 next year. And being ahead of the curve instead of always coming in here and saying, as we did last time, we're $150,000 short.
To speak
So,
to that,
we know what the salaries are going to be next year.
I understand, but then there's the year after and the year after. And will you be
Understand.
back? You'll be back. But when will you be
That's
back?
easily understandable if you understand what that salary is. When the board and the General Assembly passed the salary for FY 2026, boom, there it is. We know what it should be.
Yep.
And you're always playing to the game, not trying to do a recap from last year and playing catch-up. My thoughts.
and just to speak to that, last time we brought this up in 2022, I did not account for the proposed salary increase, which was my error. If you all remember, I think we were catching up from, it was 12 or 14 years previous amendment, and I was focused more on the here and now, and I think that's part of the reason why we've come back so fast. If I would have accounted for the salary increase for the department, it would not have been as big as of a difference. But like I said, that was my error in 2022, is that we were so focused on catching up, I forgot to look forward to at least that next increase. So that was,
So it's
like
not-
Chairman
it's not
Dis-
included in here either? Where is it?
this now is included of the one that the board just adopted. I'm saying one of the reasons we came back so fast is because I didn't include the increase that was July 1 of 22. I forgot to include that, so we were already behind 0 as soon as we adopted the fee schedule, because I didn't account for it in 2022.
But it is
So
counted in this document.
this one is accounted for what we've got now, and as well as there's a vacant position that we accounted for, as well as the proposed increase for that position as well. So those are two items that are accounted for.
Good. Any other questions on fee schedules?
I got 20 whole minutes to try and amend that TOD thing if you want.
All right, well then, if there are no more questions, then we will close the work session. Be back at 7.
It's already done.
George, question
I
for
don't
you.
think I made many points today.
Question Everybody pretty much in place.
We rolled 55
Right.
rolls for January.
All right, I'd like to call this June meeting of Louisa County Planning Commission to order. Ms. Johnson, could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Jarvis? Mr. Barla?
Yeah.
Mr. Brooks?
Here.
Mr. Weaver?
Here.
Mr. Disasway?
Here.
Mr. Dickerson?
Here.
Mr. Quarles?
Here.
Mr. Goodwin?
Here,
Mr. Kersey?
Here.
Mr. Purcell?
All right, we all please stand while we have the invocation led by Commissioner Dickerson and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Quarles.
Let us pray. Father God, thank you for once again bringing us together tonight. We thank you for establishing Louisa County and for those who've perpetuated it so that we may make decisions tonight. Help us to make good decisions, to be good stewards of the resources we have so that future generations may inherit Louisa better than we found it. And give us all safe mercies as we travel home tonight. In your most holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, you have the agenda before you tonight. Can we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
so moved.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the agenda as presented. Any comments or changes to the agenda? Very well, hearing none. Ms. Johnson, could we have a roll call vote on approval?
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Here.
Mr. Disasway?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Quarles?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes,
Mr. Kersey?
Yes.
Thank you. The Planning Commission minutes from the May meeting are in your packet, pages 3 through 6. Look for a motion to approve the minutes from the May meeting.
so moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any comments or changes to the minutes as presented? Very well. Very well. Hearing none, or are there? No? Oh, very well. Hearing none, then Ms. Johnson, could we have a roll call on approving the May minutes?
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Disasway?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Quarles?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes,
Mr. Kersey?
Yes.
All right. Minutes are approved. We do not have anything tonight for the consent agenda, so we'll move on to the public address period. The public address period is a time when members of the public can address the Planning Commission on any item that is not a part of a public hearing for tonight. So I'm going to open the public address period in just a moment. I do have a couple of items here that I'm going to read for people who have submitted comments. After that, then I'll open it up to the floor. You'll have 3 minutes to speak if you wish to address the commission. If you wish to address the commission on a topic, if you are part of a a group or organization, please let me know. That changes your time to speak. So, the public address period is open. First item here was submitted. It is from Green Springs resident Jennifer Perkins, and she is in support of the aquatic facility upgrade. Next item here is from Elaine Taylor from the Mountain Road District, and that, I'm sorry, does not occur here. That occurs during one of our public hearings tonight. So that was the one I had. We'll pick the other one up later. Is there anybody else in the room that would like to address the Planning Commission on any topic that's not a part of a public hearing this evening? Very well, seeing none, close the public address period. Move on to unfinished business. We did have some unfinished business regarding comprehensive plan parts and pieces. And I believe we heard at the work session that none of that was worked on this past month due to other situations going on. So we're looking for an update on that in July. Very well. Seeing no other comments on that, we can move to public hearings. First public hearing, CUP 2024-02, Virginia Electric Power and Power Company. Mr. Eglin.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Tom Eglin Jr. I am the Deputy Director of Louisa County's Community Development Department. Before you tonight, the owner and applicant, Virginia Electric and Power Company, requests the issuance of a conditional use permit for the revision and renewal of Conditional Use Permit 2017-11 to allow for the continued operation of an existing spent nuclear fuel storage facility in accordance with the Land Development Regulations, Section 86-481 and 86-488, permitted uses with the conditional use permit in the Industrial General District I-2. The North Anna Nuclear Power Plant is located at the end of Haley Drive, Route 700, approximately 1 mile north of the intersection of Kentucky Springs Road, Route 652, and is further identified as tax map parcel 30-90 and 30-91 in the Cuckoo Election District. The 2040 future land use map shown on the current screen designates the parcel as industrial in the Lake Anna growth area. The primary goal of the Louisa County 2040 Comprehensive Plan is to preserve Louisa County's rural character. This is accomplished in part by directing industrial and commercial uses to growth areas with parcels planned and zoned for those uses. Staff has determined that the requested conditional use permit is consistent with the planned future land use for this area of the county. The Board of Supervisors adopted a public facilities plan on February 20th, 2024 as an amendment to the 2040 Comprehensive Plan. Implementation of the recently adopted public facility plan allows the county the ability to identify the impacts of proposed development and offers the means to consider proposed mitigation. Staff has provided an analysis of the proposed project on page 10 in the staff packet, and the applicant has provided an analysis that can be found in staff packet pages 25 and 26. A neighborhood meeting was held in the Louisa County Public Meeting Room on May 8th, 2023 at 4 p.m., at which no citizens attended. Staff recommends approval of Conditional Use Permit 2024-02 to revise and renew the existing Conditional Use Permit 2017-11 for a period of 7 years for the continued operation of a spent nuclear fuel storage facility with the revised conditions in red text found on pages 11 and 12 of your staff packet. This concludes staff's report, and the applicant is here and has a presentation for you.
Very well. Before we go to presentation, any questions for the staff at this time? All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the public comment period, and the first commenter is the applicant, as typical. So, public comment period is open. The applicant will have 10 minutes to address us.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Sarah Marshall. I'm representing Dominion Energy, and I live in the Mineral District. First and foremost, just quickly going over Dominion Energy. This CUP is looking at Dominion Energy Virginia specifically, of which in the state we have over 2.7 million customers, including our 20,000 megawatts and greater of generation, which includes North Anna Power Station here in Louisa County. In Louisa County specifically, Dominion Energy Virginia represents over 4,500 customers. We have over 420 employees and retirees who live in the county. We have 5 major assets, the largest being North Anna Power Station, and in 2023 we paid over $12 million in property taxes. So looking at why we're here tonight, there's really 3 core aspects of our company. We have generation, transmission, and distribution. Generation provides power, transmission takes it to substations, and then the distribution takes that power to homes and businesses. Tonight, with the independent spent fuel installation, that is focused primarily on generation, again, focused at our North Anna Power Station. North Anna itself located again here in Louisa County at Lake Anna, has over 800 full-time employees, about 360 contract employees. We bring about 1,000 employees into the station during refueling outages, and we are a large taxpayer as well as a large provider of not only generation but carbon-free generation for the Commonwealth. And that gets us to the independent spent fuel storage installation, which is the CUP amendment we're looking at for this evening. Simply, this is where we store the spent or the used fuel from North Anna Power Station. It resides on currently about 3 acres at North Anna within the North Anna Power Station property. What we're looking for is a simple revision and renewal. The CUP itself requires a renewal every 7 years. We are at that 7-year mark. In addition, we've worked with staff to look at some minor wordsmithing, including in condition 12, changing MOX to not just have the acronym, but actually read out mixed oxide fuel. Does not change anything other than the wording. And then updating condition 15, whereas 7 years ago, we were in the process of building pad 3, which, as you can see on the screen, it would be that green space originally, which now holds pad 3. Updating that condition to read that that pad has been constructed and will now be operated and maintained, such as pad 1 and 2. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Let's complete the public address period, and then we'll come back to questions.
Sounds good.
Yes, thank you. All right, so if you would like to speak on this, well, let's see. That's right, that's not for this one. If you would like to speak on this issue, I don't have any cards here, so individually, please come forward. You need to state your name and your voting district. You'll have 3 minutes to speak unless you represent an organization. You'll need to let me know you do. The public address period is open now, or public comment period, I'm sorry, is open now. So anyone who would like to speak on this, come forward at this time. Seeing none, then I'll go ahead and close the public comment period. Public comment period's closed. And now, do we have any questions for the applicant or staff?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Goodwin.
I have a question for the applicant. Reading through the package, your license is good through 2058. Rough math, that's this CUP and 6 more. What's the end state look like over the next 34 years?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What's the end state look like over the next 34 years?
Are you asking in regards to what will the spent fuel look like, and what does the storage of that look like over the next 34 years?
And the amount, technology coming down the line of how it's stored, the requirements to do that, what does it look like?
Yep. So from a Dominion Energy perspective, it looks very similar, or if not exactly the same as what is currently out there now, other than pad 3 being full. Pads 1 and 2 and 3 will hold the current spent fuel for our existing license, which we are looking at a second relicensing that we hope to receive this year from the NRC. We are waiting and anticipating the federal government, Congress, and the DOE, and looking at interim spent fuel storage facilities as well as permanent. That is the role of Congress for a permanent spent fuel storage facility. However, there are 2 privately owned facilities that have been approved by the NRC, one in New Mexico, one in Texas, that have not started construction. And the DOE recently, in May of this year, took the first procedural steps to start their process for their own interim storage facility. So as of right now, until one of those opens, we will continue to maintain the ISFSI at North Anna and continue to put the spent fuel there on site. If and when there's additional spent fuel, whether it's from a second relicensing or otherwise, that's something that we would have to come to Louisa County, just as we have for pad 3, for any expansion.
Follow up?
Mr. Goodwin?
After pad 3, how many other pads do you envision?
Right now, only pad 3. It's hard to say. That would require future nuclear to be approved at North Anna. So as of right now, with what we have approved, pad 3 will take us through that lifetime.
One more.
Mr. Goodwin?
And if this was not approved by Louisa County, what would your plan be
We would,
consist of? Would you have to take it to Suffolk, to Sussex?
right now, there is nowhere else to take it, so we would have to shut down North Anna, and we would still maintain the fuel that's on site, until there's a different or a federal repository available.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Marshall, just to follow up, since there is a relicensing effort currently underway for North Anna Units 1 and 2 to go from 60 to 80 years, is pad 3 sufficient to take North Anna all the way to 80 years?
I'm going to confirm with Rich. I believe it stops at
It is
60.
not.
Yep. So
It stops at 60?
Yep. So we would have to come back to Louisa for an expansion if we were to get that relicensing and move forward with running the station for up to 80 years.
So at this point, we could go to 2038 and 2040 with pad
Correct.
3? All right. Yes. All right. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't have a question, just
Mr.
a
Kersey.
comment. I recall I was on the Board of Supervisors over 40 years ago when the county sued Dominion over the spent fuel issue. So it's something that has been discussed, obviously, for a long time and has not been resolved, unfortunately. At that May 8th meeting, as Mr. Goodwin asked today, I asked Ms. Marshall what would be the alternate for Dominion, and she told me at that time, at that meeting, as well it would close. I would encourage us to write officially our legislators in Congress, encouraging them to do something with this and not give it lip service. 40 years is a long time.
That is correct. Any other comments or questions? Then in that case, since the realignment, I cannot remember if, Mr. Goodwin, if this is in your district or my district.
Mine.
Very well, then we'll look for a motion on this, Mr. Goodwin.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I move that we recommend to the board approval of this CUP request, update, renewal, I guess. And I would also like to include in that motion a recommendation that the board take an official position to our representatives in Washington on the issue of interim and national storage.
Very well, we have a motion and a second. Ms. Johnson, that was Mr. Quarles on the second. Is there any further discussion on this item? Very well, Ms. Johnson, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver? Mr. Disasway?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Quarles?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mr. Kersey?
Yes.
Very well, motion passes. And that concludes that CUP. We'll move on to the next CUP, 2024-03, County of Louisa applicant for Holly Grove Volunteer Fire Department Tower. Mr. Eglin.
Good evening again, Chairman and members of the commission. Before you tonight, the owner and applicant, the County of Louisa, Virginia, requests the issuance of a conditional use permit, CUP 2024-03, to allow for a civic use in accordance with Section 86-154, permitted uses with a conditional use permit in the General Agricultural A2 zoning district, and a wireless communication facility greater than 100 feet in height in accordance with Section 86-665 permitted uses table within Division 5 telecommunications regulations. The property is located on the east side of Route 635, Factory Mill Road, immediately south of the intersection of Route 610, Holly Grove Drive. The property is further identified as tax map parcel 98-96 in the Mountain Road Election District. The property is currently used as the Holly Grove Volunteer Fire Department. The 2040 future land use map designates the property as rural. The Board of Supervisors adopted a public facilities plan on February 20th, 2024 as an amendment to the 2040 Comprehensive Plan. Implementation of the recently adopted public facilities plan allows the county the ability to identify the impacts of proposed development and offers the means to consider proposed mitigation. Staff has provided an analysis of the proposed project on page 62 and 63 of your staff packet. Virginia State Code Section 15.2-2223 details how a comprehensive plan shall be made with the purpose of guiding and accomplishing a coordinated, adjusted, and harmonious development that best promotes the health, safety, convenience, prosperity, and general welfare of its inhabitants. Chapter 3 of the Louisa County 2040 Comprehensive Plan states, quote, "The plan protects Louisa's rural character and provides the efficient delivery of public services," end quote. Therefore, staff recommends that the Planning Commission find the requested application to be in substantial conformance this evening with the 2040 Louisa County Comprehensive Plan and Public Facilities Plans, as the project will enable first responders in the southeastern portion of Louisa County to better communicate with their headquarters and other agencies, providing a higher level of service to the citizens and visitors of Louisa County. A neighborhood meeting was held in the Louisa County Public Meeting Room on June 12th, yesterday, at 4 p.m., and no citizens attended. The 2007 Telecommunications Master Plan's projected theoretical coverage map for the year 2020, shown on the current slide, appears to show the Holly Grove Volunteer Fire Department falling just outside of the sufficient coverage area. Therefore, a new wireless tower at this location complies with the 2007 Telecommunication Master Plan, as it may provide improved wireless coverage while minimizing tower proliferation throughout the county. I'm going to add a little something in that I was normally asked back in 2019 is what the comment on the Louisa County from the Louisa County Broadband Authority is. I have received comment on that. They are switching gears more to the fiber rollout, so they do not have comment on this tower. But I have been asked to provide that. I think back in 2019 was the last time we had a case. Staff recommends the Planning Commission therefore recommend approval of the conditional use permit 2024-03 to the Board of Supervisors with 14 conditions listed on packet pages 65 and 66. And this concludes staff's report.
Are there any questions for staff at this time?
And I do have balloon test photos and a concept plan if you'd like to see it.
All right, then what we'll do is I'll open the public comment period. Public comment period for this is open since the county is the applicant. The applicant is not speaking tonight because we've already had the presentation. So we'll go directly to public comment. If anyone would like to speak on this, I don't have any cards on this item either. So if anyone would like to speak, please come forward, state your name and your voting district. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Would anyone like to speak on this CUP? Very well, seeing none, we'll close public comment period and we'll bring this back to the commission. Any further questions from the commission? All right, then we'll be looking for a motion on this.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brooks?
do you, one motion, or we need two, since it's need to substantial accord with the comprehensive plan?
Well, it would be 2 motions then, wouldn't it? Yes, indeed. Are
Mr.
you-
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the request that it is in substantial accord with the comprehensive plan.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further comment on this? All right. Ms. Johnson?
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver? Yes. Mr. Dissington?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Quarles?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mr. Kersey?
Yes.
All right, that approves the substantial use. Now we'd look for a motion on the conditional use
A
permit. request.
motion to recommend approval of the conditional use permit request.
Second.
Moved and seconded for the CUP. Any comments on the CUP? Very well, Ms. Johnson?
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Disasway?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Cross?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mr. Kersey?
Yes.
Very well. The motion passes. Next item is ordinance 2024-03, proposed amendments to Chapter 86. Gold
Good evening,
Mine Creek.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Renee Moyer, the Associate Planner for Louisa County. Before you is a request for removal from the Gold Mine Creek Agricultural and Forestal District. William C. Coleman requests that a maximum of 10 acres of tax map parcel 15-28 containing 75 acres be removed from the existing Gold Mine Creek Agricultural and Forestal District, and the remaining 65 acres stay in the AFD. The parcel is zoned agricultural A1, and the acreage is being requested for removal for the completion of a division of the property for the owner's son. A family subdivision may be completed with a parcel still being in the designated agricultural and forestal district. However, the owners have stated their preference is to not use the family division process for the proposed division, as the state and county regulations only allow one family division per qualifying family member per locality. This code section can be found on page 67 of your staff packet. The Gold Mine Creek contains approximately 3,500 acres. It does not appear that removal of a portion of the property would have any effect on the overall district requirements. The Agricultural, Forestal, and Rural Preservation Committee met on May 22nd, 2024, and voted to forward a recommendation for approval of the request to remove a maximum of 10 acres. The committee acknowledged that recommending approval of the request appeared in conflict with the intent of the Agricultural and Forestal Districts and Comprehensive Plan. However, in their discussion, the committee recognized requests for removal from a district had to each be evaluated on its own merits, specifically stating that the Colemans own the majority of the acreage in the Gold Mine Creek AFD. They are generational farmers and they would continue to farm the property. This concludes staff's presentation, and the applicant is here to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for the staff at this time? Very well, then I'm going to open the public comment period. Public comment period is open, and the first person to address is always the applicant. So you'll have 10 minutes to speak to us.
I don't know that I'm gonna need 10 minutes to do it. This thing is gonna take place regardless whether I have to use a family division or not. The main purpose of it was I was trying to save his family division and use a division right of the property. And at this day and time, you don't know what may happen down the road or what changes may take place. And that's the sole purpose of why I want to save his family division for just an emergency at some point in time somewhere. And that is the entire purpose, is not to put this property up that it will be sold later on or anything like that. I'm gonna continue to farm all the way around it. And if for some reason down the road, if they thought that they wanted to put it up for sale, what you may say, I don't see where I have any purpose but to buy it back. Because I don't, when you're farming all the way around somebody, you pretty much have to have control of what you do. But the only reason, and the only reason that we're doing this is to save the family division for future purposes. And that's all.
I think it's a pretty good distance away.
Nothing else. That's pretty much what I got to say.
Very good. Thank you.
Anybody else have
So-
any questions?
We'll get there, and you'll have 5 minutes at the end to address anything you may hear in public comment, so.
Okay.
So we'll have an opportunity for you. All right, so Now open it up to the public. If anybody in the public would like to speak on this, again, come forward, state your name and your voting district, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak on it. Would anyone like to come forward and speak? All right. I guess then you really don't need 5 minutes to talk about anything you heard. Very good. We'll close the public comment period and come back to the commission. Questions and comments from the commission? All right. In that case, I think we determined this was in Louisa District. Is that correct? Is in Mineral District?
I think it's actually in Mineral now.
Is that,
Yeah, I think it's
Or did-
none.
it is?
Yeah, I think it's none.
I think it's still Louisa.
It's, you know, it's hard to tell some, is the way they change things up, some of this stuff, yeah. All right, very well, then in that case, it falls to me. I'll turn the gavel over to Mr. Dickerson. And I'm going to make a motion here on this to approve the ordinance 2023-03 land development regulations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we're ready for the roll call vote.
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Disisway?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Cross?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes?
Mr. Kersey?
Yes.
Motion carries, and I turn the gavel back over quickly.
Very good. All right, next up is ordinance 2024-04, Technology Overlay District. Mr. Coons.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. So items are in the agenda packet, starting on packet page 77. What's before you today is removing the permitted uses and requiring a conditional use permit for items in the Technology Overlay District, as well as removing 3 assemblages, one at Gum Springs, one north of Northeast Creek and the Shannon Hill property. That north of Northeast Creek is known as Fisher Tuning. We will note that the Fisher Tuning property, the owner had requested to stay in, and that same owner had a piece of property in the Gum Springs TOD as well, which is on packet page 80 has the request from the Board of Supervisors work group, and packet page 81 has the items or the assemblages requested to remain in the TOD is in yellow. And then just to address what we had spoken about in the previous work session, we worked through with Commissioner Goodwin the intent of what we discussed and with legal, and the best way forward is on packet page 78. We had discussed striking section 86, 334. However, after further discussion, I didn't save it there, Tom. So we would strike after are hereby authorized, strike and by right in the TOD, and replace it with are hereby authorized only if they are included in the conditional use permit, which should address the situation discussed that if the individual applicant wanted to add an item at a later date, they would have to amend the conditional use permit at that later date to include it. So that the best way to accomplish what was discussed earlier would be that way. And I'll stand ready to answer any questions.
Are there any questions at this time for staff?
Just a statement, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate
Goodwin.
staff working on this in such a short period of time, and I think you've done a good job of capturing the spirit of the conversation that we had during the work session. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Very well, then I'm going to open the public comment period. Public comment period is open. The applicant is normally first to speak, but it's the county here, and that's already been done, so we'll move directly to the public portion. I do have an electronic comment from Elaine Taylor of Mountain Road District, who says, "Please remove Gum Spring Technology Overlay District. The intense water use of data centers has no surface water sourced there. They will be drawing from our only future source of water down here, deep underground reservoirs, which are ancient water. Let them make their profit from capturing surface water. Water scarcity is a life and death issue of the future." And that's the comment from Ms. Taylor. So if anyone in the audience tonight would like to speak on this, please come forward at this time. Again, state your name and your voting district. You'll have 3 minutes to speak.
My name's Naomi Lerman. I own White Walnut Farm, which is a very old farm built in 1743. It's a historical farm. And this one on Shannon Hill is going to be built right next to my farm. I'm concerned about the water. Our farm has never supposedly, according to the previous owner, has never ever run out of water. And we're farmers. We have farm, we have animals, we have forest, we have vegetation that we grow. And I'm worried about the water. I'm worried about my wells. I'm worried about my ability to farm because I know that these big data centers use massive amounts of water. I know they do. I'm doing my homework and I want to be understanding how it's going to affect my farm and my family and my livestock and my life. Maybe this is not the time to do that, but I just found out about this meeting from this letter, which is conveniently sent very late, a week before this meeting. And I didn't see anything on your website about this meeting. So I just want to understand how you're going to affect me and my family and my farm with the water.
This period is for you all to comment to us. It's not interactive.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm very concerned, and I want to state that I'm very concerned, and I'd like to be reached out to as a farm, a 115-acre farm that's going to be affected by this thing being right next to me. And I'm not going to be hearing whippoorwills anymore, I'm sure, by the time that buzz is coming up and the lights. So I'd like to be reached out to, and I'll be happy to give you my phone number or email or whatever you need. And I need to talk with you, sir, and I need to meet with anybody that, is going to help represent me and my farm and my family to help us to, deal with this. Because it's a beautiful old farm, and I don't want it to be wrecked by this big, humming, loud, lit-up thing. And all the construction that's going to go on, all the roads, all the noise from that and the tearing up of the roads, that's going to happen too. So with no farms, you have no food, and I'm a farmer, just trying to farm. Thank you, people. Thank you very much. Hope you reach out to me.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Come forward, state your name and your voting district. Come into the microphone, please. We have to capture it for the record.
David Pekowski from the Shannon Hill District. I'm concerned about discharge. What kind of discharge is going to come out of the buildings and soak into the ground? Because that will also affect our water, maybe even more so. It'll be poisoned if there is any left. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Very well, then we'll close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Mr.
I
Brooks.
have a question for Mr. Coons.
Yes, sir.
The folks that y'all went to originally about creating these TOD districts. As far as the removal now versus applying it back then. Was it ever discussed with them that this may be temporary and in a year or two, we're gonna wanna take this back? Or it's just, so we have one landowner that doesn't want theirs being removed
Correct.
in two different places, I
So
guess.
so the recommendation is for the 3 assemblages in red to be removed. That's what's before you tonight. But in speaking with the property owner, the small parcel, it's the 200-acre parcel at Gum Springs, as well as the Fisher Tuning site in yellow, that owner had requested to remain in the TOD. So like I said, the recommendation from the technology overlay work group from the board had recommended removing those 3 assemblages completely. But like I said, the owner had requested to stay in, so we just want to make sure that we presented that to you all.
Does staff support that request?
Well, with the other item that we are addressing, to remove it from by right and require a conditional use permit, then some of the comments that were brought up and concerns can be addressed in the future. So it would be up to the planning commission how you guys feel that you should make the recommendation.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Coon.
Mr. Coons, the Fisher Tuning piece down at Gum Spring, what is the underlying zoning and growth area if it applies for that right now?
I will need to look that up for you.
Let's take just a moment and look at it, if we could.
Mr. Chair, while they're looking that up, can I ask another question?
You may.
The Fisher Churning property, Mr. Coon, that's between 33 and 22, haven't we already approved a CUP for utility-size solar construction of considerable size?
Yes, sir.
On that property?
Yes, there's still an active CUP for solar.
And the solar was one of the uses that we were envisioning under the TOD.
If they had a CUP for it as well, yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, just thought I remembered that correctly.
Future. Or I'm sorry, A2 is the property.
Is there besides the TOD, is there any other overlay district on that right now? In other words, is it in a growth area, and what is the?
It's in the Gum Springs growth area.
And what's that generally envisioned for? Is
Mixed
that
use is the future
mixed
land
use?
use.
Mr. Chair, when you have an opening?
Mr. Goodwin?
When you have an opening, I have a
Please,
question.
go ahead.
Mr. Coons, because we were looking at these as TODs, these 2 of them, Shannon Hill and Gum Springs, and growth areas, we were including those 2 entrances into the county in our unfinished business on gateways. Does this in any way affect our desires to improve the traffic flow and aesthetics and safety of the gateways coming in on Shannon Hill and 522?
So Shannon Hill's not in a growth area to my understanding. But Gum Spring.
But it wasn't a TOD.
Correct.
And we were looking at naming all of the major, excuse me, Mr. Chair, follow up. All of the major entrances off of 64 plus New Bridge and Gordonsville as areas that we desired to put some enhanced ordinances, again, for public safety, for traffic flow, and for visual aesthetics. I'm wondering if we take Gum Springs and Shannon Hill out, do we still have the desire and the rationale to look, because of the growth areas, to keep them in the gateway consideration?
I think so. Like, the growth areas are intended for the higher development. Same thing, the other rationale that we were looking at in the transportation chapter would be the vehicle trips per day. And I'm sure if you look at 605, right in the Shannon Hill area, it's going to be one of the larger vehicle trips per day. So I don't see why that would impact our ability to include that in the transportation section or gateway section.
Great, that's good news. Thank you, Mr. Coons. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
quick
Dickerson.
question. Mr. Kuhn, just for clarification, and by name, we're looking to remove Gum Spring, Shannon Hill, and Fisher Chewing from the technology overlay districts?
That is the recommendation before you. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Quarles?
Mr. Coon, so Fisher Tuning is, the request was to stay back in, right?
Correct.
Okay, so we're actually looking at removing Gum Spring and Shannon Hill.
No, the item before you today is to remove those three assemblages. It was just, that's what came from Board of Supervisors work group on TOD. After speaking with the owner of Fisher Tuning and the Duke property at Gum Springs, they had requested to stay in. So we're providing you that information. However, it was directed by the Board of Supervisors to remove all three assemblages.
That's their request, but that's not necessarily what we're looking at.
The Board of Supervisors directed this item in this manner to come before the Planning Commission.
Okay, understand, thank you.
Makes the motion on this.
Well, so what I was going to say is, since this is not attached to any particular district, then the chair is looking for a motion at large on this item.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Goodwin?
I would like to make a motion that we recommend approval of the TOD working group's recommendation before us. With the changes that Mr. Coons discussed and discussed briefly to sections 86-333 and 86-334.
Just point of clarification, there is no amendment to 333.
Okay.
It's only for 334, and the last part of the first sentence will read, hereby authorized only if they are included in the conditional use permit, with and by right in the TOD stricken.
Mr. Chair, I will take that as a friendly amendment to my motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further comment on the item? Very well, Ms. Johnson?
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Disisway?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Quarles?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mr. Kersey?
No.
Right, motion carries. And we'll move on to ordinance 2024-05, which is, affects the Inez Ag and Forestal District. Ms. Moyer.
Good evening again, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Before you is the disposition of the Inez Agricultural and Forestal District. The district was originally established in 1994 with a 10-year review period The district was renewed in 2004, 2014, and is scheduled to expire on September 6, 2024. Approximately 377.48 acres of either A1 or A2 agriculturally zoned properties currently make up the INS district as depicted in the current slide. The 2040 Louisa County Comprehensive Plan designates this area of Louisa County as rural. The Louisa County Community Development Department contacted the current property owners of the INS district to inform the owners of the renewal period. A response was received on 5 parcels, all 5 requesting that the parcels be removed from the district. A late response was also received on the remaining 3 parcels to be kept in the district. An example of the letter sent out by staff can be found on page 82 of the staff packet. Removal of these 5 parcels will disqualify the district from meeting the core requirement of 200 acres in 1 parcel or contiguous parcels for district establishment and existence. Staff contacted the property owner who requested to remain in the district about applying for an addition to the next closest district, Shelton's Mill. The owner expressed an interest but requested additional time to explore this option. The Agricultural, Forestal, and Rural Preservation Committee met on May 22nd and had no additional comments. So in closing, the resulting action is the non-renewal of the INES Agricultural and Forestal District due to insufficient acreage remaining to meet the core requirements and to amend the ordinance to remove the INES district as an approved agricultural and forestal district.
Very well. Any questions for the staff at this time? Thank you. We're going to open the public comment period. Public comment period is open. If any member of the public would like to speak on this item, please come forward, state your name and voting district. Seeing none, then, we'll close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission for comments.
I have a motion.
Very well. The
I'll
chair
just
will...
make a comment, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad that staff is working with the other 3 property owners to see if they can get them in another ag district. So I
Very good.
appreciate staff doing that.
Very well. The chair will entertain a motion on this then.
Motion to approve the request to remove the INES Ag and Forest District.
Moved and seconded. Any further comments on this action? Very well. Ms. Johnson?
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Dissisway?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Cross?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes,
Mr. Kersey?
Yes.
Motion carries. So we'll move on then to the final item, ordinance 2024-06, schedule of fees. Mr. Coons.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. What we have before you today is proposed amendments to the fee schedule. Purpose of this is to try and cover the cost of community development by those individuals that are utilizing the service. And I stand ready to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff at this time? Very well then, we'll open the public comment period. Public comment period is open. If anyone would like to come forward and speak on this, please step forward, state your name, and you know the drill. And you'll have 3 minutes. Very well, then we'll close public comment period. And we'll bring it back to the commission for comments.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brooks?
the increase, I guess the 3 to jump out at me is the building permit fee, CUP fee, and the rezoning fee is just pretty extreme. I'm not saying as Mr. Goodwin asked for earlier, we may need more detail to, in my mind's eye, to support or increase like that. And also this, the CUP, the wide range of, I know down my way in Mountain Road District, we had a CUP on a 15, 20 acre, just a farm lot that requested a CUP. And then we got some potential down the road, like a Love's Truck Stop. And it's just, it's got to be some factor or some method to come up with proper pricing that a landowner's not getting the brunt of us trying to come up with something that's fair to dig us out the hole we're in. I'd kind of like to see what some of the adjoining counties are charging on those three items. Maybe some support of how we came up with this number. And as Mr. Coons said, this may be a yearly thing that needs to be done and not waiting 2 years or 4 years or whatever the case may be to keep up with it, to avoid such a drastic jump that's going to have a lot of people upset that's coming up here to make requests. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Very well.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Goodwin?
I'm going to repeat some things I said during the work session just for the benefit of the public for the official meeting. First of all, I have worked with Mr. Coons on several different projects, and I trust that he pays attention to detail that I miss working with him. But it doesn't come out in this request. We have 2 years of a gap of 141 to 194,000 expenses over revenue, and yet no way can I look at this and say this takes us as close as reasonably possible to know that we're taking that as close to zero as we can, which is what the letter says that we're trying to do, is get the people being provided the service to pay for the service, which I agree with. But I do want some assurance that where does this get us with respect to eliminating the gap? I don't know that because I know he's got, I've worked with him, I know he's got the details, but it's just not here that I can make any justification whether it's enough or not enough. So that's my comment on it.
Mr. Quarles?
Mr. Chair. Understanding and respect of Commissioner Goodwin's concerns, I think it was brought up in the meeting that, one, you have expenses, you have, if you will, inflation. And those things, you can't really tell, if you look at the last couple of years, the inflation as opposed to 5 years ago is a big difference. So we don't have a crystal ball, and we can't tell about, for sure, what the actual increases would be. So I don't know that we can look at the methodology that Mr. Coons uses, but I don't think that you can forecast the future.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Coons?
just to address one of the questions you had about what other localities charge, like for a conditional use permit. So Spotsylvania County, if it is a special use permit, which is our conditional use permit, for new development, it is $6,825 plus the mailing fee. If there's no new development, it is $4,205
I'm sorry,
plus the mailing fee.
What was the second one?
That was if there's no new development. So if there's a building on site, but they want to switch the use. So be like if they wanted to repurpose a barn for a wedding venue, I'm out. You'd have to ask them, but that is my understanding.
Okay.
So yeah, so we're talking about going up to 2,500, and then in the bottom, we did have they'd need to cover the cost of any mailing, plus I think it's $25 per adjacent property owner, because we have to do certified letters and everything to them as well, but
Can you bring up Fluvanna real quick like that too?
I will try.
Take a tour of the state.
I have Fluvanna
If
as
if I
a
understand it, the difference there,
800.
6,000
800
versus
feet.
our 2,500
Special use permit.
proposed increase?
So Fluvanna's 800. So it's
Wide variation.
wide variation, isn't it?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Quarles?
should we look at Goochland as well, just for some median?
Do you have a matrix of the state there, Mr. Coon?
Mr. Chairman, I've taken a chance to take a look at a few of these in different localities. Orange County has it at $400 plus its mailing and advertisement fees. Hanover County has it at $1,500 plus $75 for every acre of the parcel. My hometown, Chesterfield County, has it at $2,000, and then it splits up between different particular uses. So just from my practice throughout the Commonwealth, there's a great variety of how these fees are structured between the localities.
You mentioned Goochland in there?
I don't know if I did.
It's being looked up.
I'm trying to look up Goochland right now.
I think probably it's interesting too, if development is not encouraged by the Board of Supervisors, the fee structure is likely fairly low because they're not getting a lot of applications. I don't know. I just throw that out.
Mr. Chairman, a comment? If I
Mr.
may, while the
Dickerson.
thumbs are working on
Mr.
these numbers.
Dickerson, yes.
One thing concerns me is a lot of these are fees to a builder, but then they get passed on to the homeowner right away, which is our citizen and taxpayer. If you look at new single-family dwelling, currently it's $300 and it jumps up to $1,500, which is a 400% increase that's going to get passed on to the homeowner. It just concerns me. I'm all for covering our costs, but that's a steep addition to the cost of a home.
And just to address that, I don't have it with me, but single-family dwelling, when you add the 30 cents per finished square foot or the price per square foot versus the deck and all that, it gets up pretty close to 1,000, if not more. So that's not something that it's necessarily new. It's just the minimum that's changing, as well as so we've also included those items below it, but that's something that it is already above 300 for a lot of the different items that we've got.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Do we have an answer on Goochland? Or do we need an answer on Goochland?
The one I see, it looks like an old pamphlet though, says $750. It's from 2019.
Oh,
So.
well.
Lots changed since then.
About 3 times. Other comments from the commission?
Do we need to slow down on this?
Well, this is another one of those items that's not assigned to a particular district, so the chair would look in general for a motion or guidance on the direction of the commission here on this item.
$750 for Goochland.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Goodwin?
I'd like to make a motion that we defer this. I'm not asking for a lot of effort, but I'd just like to see a little bit more effort so I'm comfortable before I look a taxpayer in the eye or a homeowner in the eye that I can answer the question that we know we're going to get, and I know the supervisors are going to get when this gets out there. And I think we just need to be in a better position to look them in the eye and give them an answer.
Second.
Motion and second on the floor. Any other comment? And so we'll defer, this is a 1-month deferral, is what you're asking for more information from Mr. Kuhn?
If it's appropriate, can I ask a question?
You may. For
Mr.
clarification.
Coons, is this setting things back is going to upset the apple cart in any way?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I scratch that I will not be here at the July meeting, so it'd have to be somebody else to present it for you.
You-
I'm on vacation and I will be in Europe. So
Don't call me.
The big bucks over there.
reimburse it. I mean,
But you'll be around before then in order
yes.
to carry us through the question. if-
Correct.
Very good.
well, I just wanted to address the question, will it upset anything? I won't be here, so
Right.
I can get it to y'all before, but I would need those questions before the meeting because Tom or Linda will have to have the methodology to address any questions.
Mr. Chair, as always, when I bring up an issue, I offer to work. I will work with Ms. Kuhn on this if he desires it. I'll make myself available.
Thank you.
Which I got to stop bringing stuff up because I think I'm at about 4 of these working groups now.
Once we're done with the office upstairs, it'll be okay. He'll just be here 5 days a week.
Very well. We have a motion on the floor with no further comments. Ms. Johnson?
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Weaver?
Yes.
Mr. Disisway?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Quarles?
Yeah.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes?
Mr. Kersey?
Yes.
Motion carries, and that concludes the public hearings for the night. Next item is new business. Mr. Coons, could you give us a little bit of information on what effect that the Board of Supervisors' approval of the use matrix had on the impact for the Loves application?
Yes, sir. So as the Planning Commission recommended last month, the matrix for truck stop, or the use of truck stop, has been approved by the Board of Supervisors in the C2 within a growth area requiring a CUP. The plan is they are going to amend their application that's currently, it's only for rezoning, so they'll need to amend it to include the CUP. And then one question that'd be beneficial from staff is prior to it coming to the Planning Commission, they have held 2 neighborhood meetings. However, the last one was done in February, and we just wanted to touch base with you all with the changes and everything, how you felt about the process before they come forward, if you all would like them to do the neighborhood meeting and get the comments for the conditional use permit.
So you are asking whether or not we think we need another public meeting since we now have a conditional use permit, which is different than what was brought before?
Correct, because they had done the public meeting for rezoning previously and met with the neighborhood meeting. I think they said it was 3 different times, but the last time it was in February, like I said, and it did not include some of the items like the public facilities chapter that we have in the comp plan now.
Comments from the commission?
Mr. Chairman, we've had 2 public meetings that I've attended, and I think they had one a year ago, that you've attended 3 or something. But since it's a different request, different process, a new process, it certainly doesn't hurt to have another community meeting. Whether we do it here like what we'd done before, we went to Gum Springs Church down at Gum Springs and getting closer to the people. So if the request is different, then it may be a good idea to have one more. But that's just a thought.
And then just point of clarification as well, is it okay if they were to have one outside of the normal calendar? So we normally have it the 2nd Wednesday of the month. So if they were able to have it at a different time, this would, because I know they would like to get in front of you all relatively quickly. So if they can schedule it, is there any opposition to them scheduling it sooner to try and get to the July meeting?
I think they still need to give the residents some notice, at
Yeah,
least
we need that proper
plenty
notice.
of notice.
Absolutely.
So the only reason why I was asking that is in case they were able to have the neighborhood meeting, a week before Planning Commission or something like that, but
I would certainly prefer to hear Mr. Brooks' opinion on that.
I'm sorry, what would y'all, I was talking with Mr. Barlow.
We might as well hear Mr. Barlow's opinion as well, but
Yeah.
on whether or not, if they were able to, with proper noticing to the surrounding landowners, if they were able to have the meeting sooner than the normal schedule, the public meeting, would
As
that
long
be
as it's
acceptable?
a decent, at least a week or two notice. If you can do that.
Mr. Barlow?
I would say we've gone from what was perceived as by right to a CUP. There have been a huge number of people at these meetings. And I think, and part of which has some of the people have complained about not getting notified, and I think that I understand why, because they're not actually adjoining parcels because it skipped a parcel. So people that are right there at the project didn't get notified. Now they have been. So I think we would not to try and rush this thing up, let them have the meeting, let the people participate, and move on with it. You got a different project now, or different requirements. So that would be my inclination.
And one more I want to add to that. Once, as we talked, I think last meeting, about once an application is deemed ready to be accepted, that's made available to the planning commission. Just provide that link where we need to go. And
Yes, sir. I do believe we're very close. There may be one or two comments that they need to address, but hopefully if they can address that this week or early next week, I think it'll be finalized that we can get you guys.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. So, Mr. Coons, does that satisfy your request?
That gives staff direction. Yes, sir.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next up is discussion items. I didn't have any discussion items unless anyone else does.
Mr. Chair,
Don't take the vote yet. I want to say something.
Wait. All right, well, okay. We'll hear from Mr. Weaver. Go ahead.
This is very important. I am glad to see Mr. Quarles back with us tonight.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
you beat me by about half a second, because that's exactly what I was going to say.
Welcome sight.
It is.
I'm glad to be back. Thank you. Thank you for all the support and everything that's happened during the ordeal. And it means a lot to me. I wasn't going to say anything about it publicly, but the outreach and the support has been tremendous. And I really appreciate everybody for that. Thank you.
It wouldn't be the planning commission without you. It wouldn't. Very good. Mr. Coon, did you have any report for us?
I do.
Well, let's hear the report.
The Community Development Department now has a new director,
Yes.
Linda Buckler. And they also have two new deputy directors, Tom Eglin for Planning and Zoning. And John Grubbs is deputy director for Building and Permitting.
Very good.
All right. Very good.
That is all I have, and ready to answer any questions.
Any other questions for Mr. Coon?
Have fun in Europe.
A lot of work before I go now.
Very well. Then with,
Oh, yeah. And Renee, I'm sorry, Renee is also the deputy subdivision agent now.
Yay, Renee!
congratulations. Very well. Then I have no further announcements. If anyone else does not, then we'll move to adjournment. So we are adjourned. Thank you all. That's right, yeah. If you're the bank, you're either a teller or vice president. It's one or the other.